What's going on, PlayDate Community? Welcome back to another episode. My name is Franchovy, and in this series we're going to be building your game. Now, just as a reminder, feel free to leave all your suggestions for what we should be doing in this game development series down below in the comments. And in the meantime, we're going to get back to these particles that we left off in the last episode. So let's get right into it. Let's run the game, press A to see this menu. Okay, started and ended. Now, it would make more sense if the particles were coming from behind the spaceship. So that's what we're about to look at next. Okay, so we're going to go to the player class. We're going to create a function underneath the init above the update function. We're going to say function player colon set particles sprite. And it's going to take one argument. It's going to be a particle sprite. Particle sprite. Okay. And what we're going to do very simply here is we're going to say self.particles sprite equals, spoiler alert, particle sprite. Okay, so this is what we call a setter function. We're basically, if we wanted to from main, so what we're going to do here is basically we're going to tell the player, hey, look, this is your particle sprite. Like, imagine you're gonna walk your dog and the game is telling you, okay, this is your dog, walk this dog, please. Fundamentally, the game needs to be in control of this particles. So you might have like a cutscene where the player doesn't emit any particles, or maybe you want to swap it out with another type of particles. So to me, it makes more sense to control this at the game level rather than the player itself creating and taking care of its particle sprite. Just like you wouldn't create your own dog. The dog is in the world living with you and the world controls you. Okay, yeah, doesn't work. What we could be doing here is player.particles equals particle sprite equals particles, which is our particle sprite. However, this is this is prone to typos. This is prone to making mistakes. If I accidentally write particle sprite, then we end up with, inside the player class, I might be calling my particle sprite all the time, and I didn't realize that I actually assigned it to particle sprite, and then I realized that, it takes me 20 minutes to debug it and find out that I made a typo there. So the setter, although it's not, it won't catch everything, it does kind of formalize how that assignment takes place, and even more importantly, I get to control if anything happens. So for example, I can do assert particle sprite, let's say type, open brackets, particle sprite equals, and then here it's suggesting to me all the different things that it could be, and I'm pretty sure that this is a table. So I could do let's assert that it's a table and I'm not just passing some random piece of string as a particle sprite. And just to see if that works, let's do player colon set particle sprite and then particles. So let's just try that, see if the assert works. Okay, so nothing's changed in the game, but the assert didn't stop us, so I assume that it's okay. Again, feel free to leave that there. I'm going to remove it because the game's pretty simple. I don't need to keep that assert there. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually control the positioning of that sprite so that it's next to the player. So one of you commented saying, please, can we have some more comments because your code doesn't make any sense. Sure, that's my answer. So we're going to put a comment above this crank position thing here, and we're going to say get crank position for rotating the sprite. So we've got the rotation here. We're getting the A button state for accelerating or not. And just spoiler alert, I'm gonna take this play button press thing, I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna put it right above saying local is a button pressed equals playdate.isButtonPressed open brackets playdate.kButtonA. If you're using the more up-to-date version of the SDK, I think you can just say button A pressed, something like that. Look it up. If not, you can just follow what I'm doing. And then we can swap out that line with just this Boolean variable that we've created. Then what we're doing here, let's add a comment. let's say crank position radians. So basically calculate the velocity using the crank angle. Then we've got on line 45, we're gonna say move the player, and then after line 49, we're gonna say teleport the player across the screen. Okay, if they leave the bounds. Okay, good enough. Then what we can do is that right before this move player, we're gonna use this crank position radians, because we're gonna do some trig here. We're gonna use this crank position radians to calculate how to position this particle sprite. So first of all, we don't actually know if the particle sprite is gonna be set or not. In theory, we could not set it. So we're gonna start this off by saying if self.particle sprite. Then, so this actually checks whether it's null or it's false. Like those are the two things where the if statement can fail. Anything else, a number, you know, a table, an object, a function, anything like that, it's gonna say that's true. So here we're just testing whether this particle sprite is assigned or not. And so it's gonna say yes if we've assigned something. Excuse me, if it's nil, then we're basically not gonna run this code. So once you've set the particle sprite, we're gonna say, okay, so let's do it same as before. Basically, self dot particle sprite move move to, and then we're gonna say, I mean, just for simplicity here, I'm gonna write x and y, and let's assign those two here. So we're going to do local x equals self.x plus math.cos crank position radians. And we're going to say local y equals self.y plus math.sine crank position radians. So we're kind of taking the same formula as we did up here. And the thing about these local x and y variables, in some cases you might want to name them better, to say like, particles x, particles y. But you can also keep in mind that because these live inside this if statement, they're not going to interfere with anything outside. So that's a handy thing about this if statement here. It's called a block. This thing right here is called a block, and it has different local variables than the local variables outside. Like, you can use the local variables from outside and use them inside the block, but when you're inside the block and you create local variables, those will not interfere with what's outside the block. So let's keep it like that for now. First of all, let's see how that looks like. So, oh, look at that. Wow. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to go back to main and I'm going to turn off this end animation. So, but add 2 dashes to make that into a comment. And let's see, is this rotating at all? It's not rotating. Wonderful. I think that's because this value right here is pretty small. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a third variable, which is called local, and we're going to call it distance from center. Wow, look at that. VS Code, it's mind reading me. That's totally not because I have another file open that I, was testing how to do this ahead of time, because my trig is just not that good. So once we got distance from center, we're going to do self.x plus distance from center times math.cos, and then self.y plus distance from center times math.sine. So we can run that again. And sorry, I didn't even say the number that I put. I put minus 48 because I think that's somewhat around the right number. I don't know if that's true or not. Okay, so first of all, we can see that the particle follows the player, and now we can see that it actually rotates around the player as well, which is nice. It's kind of what we wanted. So I think it's maybe a bit big of a number, but let's go to first. So let's add a comment here. Sorry, Mr. Comment guy, I need to add one. Position the particles sprite behind the player. Okay, we're going to do another one saying rotate the particle sprite. And so we're very simply going to say self.particlesprite.set rotation, and we're going to do crank position radians. Is this sprite thing in... Okay, we're going to use crank position directly. I'm just seeing this line right here. This is crank position. It's not radians. It's in degrees, everybody. Like 3rd grade math. All right, there we go. You can see that we're a lot closer to what we were trying to do now. And you can see that the tail is just a bit behind the player. So we're going to shrink that number by, I don't know. Let's try minus 42. 42 is a cool number, everybody. Let's see how that looks like. Still a bit large. Let's try 38. Oh, look at that. Just a tiny bit too much. Oh my god, I'm excited. Ready? 36, everybody. 36 is your magic number. Look at that spaceship flying through space. Oh man, that looks wonderful. I don't know about you guys, but I'm super happy with that. Okay, so this is our test function to make sure that this thing worked. We actually don't need that anymore. We're going to delete it. And we're going to go to the particle sprite, and we're actually going to use this start and end animation from the player to trigger when the particle sprite should play the animation and stop the animation. So what we're going to do inside player, so after this, we're going to say new comment. After the block that we just finished working on, we're going to say set the particle sprite animation. Pretty simple. When you press A, you want to play the particle sprite animation. When you stop pressing A, you want to stop the particle sprite animation. And remember that the particle sprite has 2 states, either starting or ending. So how are we going to make that connection? We're going to do this. If is a button pressed, then... So if is a button pressed, then we want to do self.particles. Oh, sorry guys, another thing. We actually need to check whether this particle sprite exists. So we're going to move this block of code, apologies. We're going to move it into that bigger block right here. So we're going to, that way we know that the particle sprite exists. So if a button pressed, then self.particlesprite, big brain moment. Start animation. Okay, and change the end to an else. Next line, self.particlesprite end animation. Woo! Wow, Einstein level genius here. Let's try it. Okay, so as you can see, we're already getting it wrong. And if I press, then you can see that it seems to be a different animation. So I think we're getting something right, but let me lead you guys to what we're maybe missing right now. So this start animation sets the state to pre, and remember that there's a transition that basically goes smoothly from pre to loop, which is the second state, and then once you're in loop, like there's no switching state anymore. It's just gonna keep looping. So ideally we want it to go through pre once and then go to loop and then just keep looping as you're holding A. And similarly, when you're stopped, and right now we're not pressing A, you can see that it's going like, it's making little farts, little sharts. Sorry, this is kind of crude humor. It's making little farts. That's also because basically once this post thing gets switched to none, it gets set back to post at end animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to control the state from in here. When start animation gets set, we're going to say if self.state equals animation states.pre, or self.state equals animation states.loop, then return. So this is in some other languages like Swift, we're gonna get there. This is called a guard statement. So it basically stops the function before the function runs. based on some condition that you want to make sure is true or is false. So we're here making sure that we're not resetting the state if the animation's already playing. That's kind of the point here. And we're going to do something very similar, so you can copy that, and we're going to paste it in the end animation. Instead of doing pre and loop, we're going to do post and none. So basically, if there's no animation playing and you tell the animation to stop, it doesn't then say, okay, I'll play the stop animation, which is kind of stupid, is what it's doing right now. So let's try that again. Let's run it. And guys, you can send an email to Ubisoft right now because this game is looking fire. Okay, I think that's all I have for you today. I know this was a quick one. I just wanted to follow up on the previous one. So thank you guys so much for watching. And feel free to leave your suggestions again in the comments for what to do next. And we're going to add some exciting things into this game. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.